Shalawam, and welcome back to The Hidden Chosen. I am Hadassah Batsaiwan, returning with this marvelous study about angels. And now we're moving into part 4 to another type of angel called the powers. Now, this will be a little bit of a surprise to many people. It was a touch surprising to me, but not really, because you kind of knew that there were spirits at work. It's just now that we are categorizing who they are and what their functions are and how they are manifested here on the earth. But this particular study about the powers, I had to divide it into two studies because it would have been too lengthy. And I really wanted to get the information in there, the scriptures included, so that we can see exactly what these particular angels are all about. So let's get started. We will look at another type of angel called the powers. Like the spirits who work with the cherubim and the Ophanim, powers are just as mysterious as they are elusive. What is spoken about them has to be discerned, as we can overlook them at work, seeing only their manifestations, and assume other angels were at work. Scriptures alluded to them. Whenever we read rather, about the miracles performed mainly in the Old Testament. So let me read that again. Scriptures alluded to them whenever we read about the miracles performed mainly in the Old Testament. But we just did not understand that it was these very elusive angels who were the causation of the miracles and healings. And I'm going to show you with many examples of these angels at work. And we would attribute it to angels, but we just did not know the type of angel that were doing these things in our forefathers' days. These angels, speaking of the powers, are incorporeal hosts, meaning that they have no physical form. They're spirits, just like the spirits with the cherubim and the Ophanim, just like Ruach HaKodesh. And they have powers given to them by Alahayam to activate his miracles and healings on the earth as he so directs them. So bear that in mind. And I use it in the present tense because there are two kinds of powers. We're going to see that in a little bit. And he's still using them, and he will continue to use them to bring about his judgments. They are like the spirits, not having any particular form, but they are capable of taking a form if the need arise, just like Ruach HaKodesh. We know Ruach HaKodesh is spirit, but he can take a form just like the dove that, or the likeness of a dove that descended upon Hamashiach when he was baptized by Yochanan the baptizer. All right? As there are holy angels and there are fallen angels, which are the wicked ones, the evil ones, so it is the same with these powers. They are holy powers, which are the good powers, and then you have the evil powers. Remember that a third of the angels fell with Gadriel, and this will include some of these powers. Now it's amazing because as you dig deeper, as Ruach HaKodesh takes you deeper into his word, things come to light that you never even thought of, you never even anticipated would come to light. And it's about these powers. Especially in part 2, you're going to see more about them and how they are, how especially the evil powers, how they are being used by the fallen angels to bring about certain effects on the earth. All right, don't want to get too far ahead of myself. It is for this reason why the fallen angels can perform certain quote unquote miracles, but their power is limited and restricted. When they fell, they were stripped, but they still retain a little of their power. And they are restricted by Alahayam Yahweh, who tells them when to act and when not to act. So let us see the evidence of the existence of powers in the Bible. We're going to look at both the holy powers and the evil powers. Matthew chapter 24, verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. So these two sentences, or rather this one verse, is telling us about the 3 days of darkness and exactly what the darkness is going to do. You have the crazy people out there saying that the darkness is the time when the hordes of hell is going to be unleashed. Don't go outside, don't open your windows, put up the black curtains, all the different crazy things, right? There will be fallen angels at work terrorizing, but according to Alahayam's instructions. And then there will be some that will be overwhelmed, just like these ones that Hamashiach spoke about. The powers that he's speaking of are these angels, but let us not restrict them to just the incorporeal host called the powers, but the fallen angels. Because in a way they are also referred to as powers, as because they're spirits. Because we know when he brings the 3 days of darkness, everything and everyone will cease, will come to an abrupt halt. The only movement that will be permitted will be the fallen angels, the unclean spirits, what have you, doing the will of Alahayam. And the other group of people that will be permitted to move around and will not be confined in the darkness will be the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom. Everyone else will be confined, will be literally paralyzed because they can't move. The darkness is going to be so great and so thick, no one, nothing will be able to function. And yet he will still preserve those that belong to him that are in the darkness, like the northern kingdom and certain Gentiles. All right. But everyone, with the exception of the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom, will be plunged into darkness. All right? And that word there, shaken, it means to overthrow. When you overthrow something, that means you gain control over. And this is what is going to happen to these powers of heaven, of the heavens. These evil powers work with the other fallen angels to help them carry out their evil agendas. They use their powers to mesmerize the nations that they want to conquer and control, to rule as their gods. But remember what we said earlier in this study, that Alahayam Yahweh has given the nations on this earth spirits to lead them astray from Him. However, when Hamashiach is due to come in the clouds to regather his people, the southern kingdom, he will overthrow these evil powers along with the fallen angels, paralyzing them in the 3 days of darkness. They will be shaken, meaning overthrown, rendering them powerless. He called them the powers of the heavens to allow us to know their origins, as angels exist in the spiritual realm, although they can manifest themselves here on the earth. So let us see the good and the evil powers at work. Let's go to Shalawam chapter 7, book of Exodus, chapter 7, verse 8. And Yahweh spoke unto Masha and unto Ahawaran, saying, When Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, Show a miracle for you, then you shall say unto Ahawaran, Take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. And Masha and Ahawaran went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so as Yahweh had commanded. And Ahawaran cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Matzorayam. They also did in like manner with their enchantments, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aharon's rod swallowed up their rods. So notice, it was Alahayam who instructed Masha to instruct Aharon to throw down his rod. And now the magicians of Matzorayam did the same thing, and it resulted in the same conversion. It resulted in their rods becoming like serpents, just like Aharon's rod became a serpent. And they used enchantments. Now, this is going to be very important to remember. All right? Very, very important. Aharon's rod was not the actual angel called power, but it was this angel's miraculous power that was activated, who turned his rod, meaning Aharon's rod, into a serpent. And so this angel's power was now manifested as the serpent. The magicians were able to do the same thing, casting their spells to invoke their evil powers, which also caused their rods to turn into serpents. So you see the difference between the powers at work here. You have the holy powers that were directed by Alahayam Yahweh to turn the rod into a serpent. And then you have the evil powers being invoked by enchantments to turn the rods of these magicians into serpents. But let's read on. Alahayam had permitted these evil powers to operate on behalf of these magicians, only to make examples of them by further instructing the holy power to cause Ahawaran's rod to swallow up the rods of the magicians. This proves to us the greater powers were the holy powers of Alahayam, who consumed the power of the evil powers. In fact, it was only one power at work, and it consumed the power of the evil powers, consumed their manifestation. So, who's greater? Those angels led by Alahayam are greater than the fallen angels. Now remember, I said they had still retained some power, and Alahayam uses them to bring about his judgments on the earth. Look at what he did with Matsurayam and the 10 plagues. All right, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. The magicians were not able to mimic all of the plagues, only 2, as the evil powers were cut off from manifesting any more of their magic. Because for us, the holy powers use their manifestations are called miracles. For the evil powers, it's called magic, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it, magic. There's no such thing as good magic. All right, just like they say, well, you have the white witches and whatnot, they're the good ones. There's no such thing. They're all evil. All right? They're all evil, regardless of their intentions. You're casting spells. You are a witch or a warlock. You are invoking evil powers, which is an abomination before Alahayam Yahweh. All right. Alahayam caused 10 plagues to devastate Matsurayam. And we see that he instructed Masha to tell Ahawaran to use his rod, which was the instrument used to instigate these plagues, activating the powers. But these were the evil powers which Alahayam commanded to bring about the tremendous disasters upon Matsurayam, and to also devastate their idols, which they worship. Alahayam used the same evil powers that Pharaoh and his people worship to devastate them. It was to our forefathers' benefit and ours today that Alahayam allowed these evil powers to work, to show us that he has full control over all their actions and their power. This is the reason why he wants us to understand that these fallen angels operate with limited power only. Even the great Gadriel operates with limited power. Hence, they are not to be feared. You see, when you begin to fear them, then it starts to empower them over us. When you're walking in faith, that means you're walking in the power of Alahayam, not in these powers called these angels called the powers, in Alahayam's power, in his might. Gonna see something in a little while, all right? Gonna understand something. And it is this that the devils try to keep us away from. The reason why they want to keep us away from him, because they know once we are connected to him, then they have no power, no reign over us. And then we become a problem to them. Because now we have the power to tear down their strongholds, to destroy their evil works. When he is with us, meaning Alahayam, they will fear us instead because of his power in us. When we give the devil an ounce, that's all he needs. He just needs a drop. And then he knows how to work that drop to make an enormous hole in whatever area of our lives that we allow him in, to come in and corrupt and disrupt. And this is the reason why Alahayam Yahweh warned our forefathers and us today to stay away from this nonsense, this magic business, this witchcraft. That's the devil's playground. And once you start dabbling in their playground, then they got their hooks in you. How are you going to get away? Let's read on. We will look at a few more examples of both of these powers, the evil and the holy powers, at work, unknowing to us, until they are revealed now to us, now that we have the understanding about who they are. Let's look at Shamawath, book of Exodus, chapter 7, verse 17. Thus said Yahweh, in this you shall know that I am Yahweh. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in my hand upon the waters that are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. Let's drop down to verse 22. And the magicians of Matzorayim did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Neither did he hearken unto them, as Yahweh has said. You see what's happening again? You see what's happening again? Now, this is the first plague. The rods were not a plague. That was just displaying the power of Alahayam so that Matzorayim, Pharaoh, could somehow realize, hey, we can't win this battle. But you know what? Alahayam wanted to display his might upon Matzorayim. So he allowed the same powers to harden Pharaoh's heart all along the way. When it says in the Bible that Alahayam hardened his heart, it's not Alahayam that actually did it, but he commanded these evil powers to do this thing. All right? Let's read Shamawath, the book of Exodus, chapter 8, verse 5. And Yahweh spoke unto Masha, say unto Ahawaran, stretch forth your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come upon the land of Matzorayim. And Ahawaran stretched out his hand over the waters of Matzorayim, And the frogs came up and covered the land of Matsarayam. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs upon the land of Matsarayam. Now, this is to show you how foolish these people were. The plagues came as judgment against them. And to prove that they have the same power as Ahawaran and Masha, they brought the plagues upon themselves. They helped to turn the water into blood, and they also helped to bring frogs out of the waters upon them own selves to prove that they had the same kind of power. And who was it that complained to Masha? The same power. Oh, he did not go to his magicians and say, get rid of them. He went to Masha and begged him, please, get rid of the frogs for us. Let's move on to Shalawam chapter 8, book of Exodus chapter 8, verse 16. And Yahweh said unto Masha, say unto Ahawaran, stretch out your rod and smite the dust of the land, and it may become lice throughout the land of Matsarayam. And they did so. For Ahawaran stretched out his hand and his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice, amen, and in beast. And all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Matsarayam. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon man and upon beast. Then the magician said unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of Alahayam. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as Yahweh had said. Yahweh said he's going to harden his heart. But what he meant when he said that is that I'm going to command that the evil powers that they invoke go and harden his heart against these miracles, against these judgments. And not only him, but the people too. We saw in another kind of study that I've done, it's not at the forefront of my mind right now, but I recalled that when it was time for I believe it was the 3 days of darkness, one of those studies, when it was time for Habanai Yashwa'al, the children of Yashwa'al, to leave Matsarayam, he paralyzed these powers, these unclean spirits, the evil spirits, all of them, paralyzed them. So that so that Habanai Yashwa'al can go to Matsarayam and receive payment in the form of them giving them gold and silver and brass and clothing and all kinds of things for all the work that they've done building their cities, which they never paid them. And they had no choice but to give them gladly, because the powers that would have hardened their hearts against the request were locked up by Alahayam. And once our people left to go on the Exodus after 3 days, then Allah actually just before they're about to leave, he had them paralyzed again. And after they left, after 3 days, then he released them. And once again, Pharaoh was on their case. He wanted to go and retrieve them, bring them back. So throughout that scenario, we saw how Alahayam Yahweh used the evil powers to provoke Parao, or to, well, when he restricted the powers, then the people found favor. That means Yashraal found favor with Matsurayam, and they were able to give them everything and anything that they had. But once these powers were at work, then their hearts were hardened towards his people. So he was using these powers to manipulate Matsurayam, to get them to the place where he wanted them so that he can destroy a lot of them, especially Parao and his chariots, and the firstborn, of course, for all the wickedness that they have done against our people. All right? And who instructed them to do this wickedness? The same fallen angels that they serve. And the same fallen angels turn around and punish them. You see? This is the awesomeness of Alahayam Yahweh. They think, I'm sure that the wicked people in this world think that their masters are powerful. Well, compared to them, they are. But compared to Alahayam, they're not. And that's why we are not supposed to fear them. Not even the wicked ones in this world. No matter what comes out of their mouth. No matter what laws they've passed. Or laws that they're threatening to pass. We're not supposed to fear anyone but Alahayam. Because He's in control. He's in control over the holy angels. He's in control over the fallen angels. The evil powers were at work not only to bring about the 10 plagues of Alahayam Yahweh by his command, but also the hardening of Paro's heart. And the people's heart too. Hearts. Because they have more than one heart, right? These evil powers, they harden the people's hearts to do great evil against our people. Because he wanted to thoroughly punish and destroy Parao and his armies. And not only them, but the gods they worshipped. He wanted to make an example of them. And trust me, the other nations around, they heard about it. They heard about these plagues. They heard about the destruction of Parao and his armies in the Red Sea. And that's why the people around, the nations around, when Yashraal left for their exodus, were afraid of them. Because they heard about the mighty powers at work. They heard about Alahayam and what he did to Parao. So they were trembling because they knew that he went with Yashraal. Alahayam used his holy powers to help the 12 tribes of Yashraal when they were in the wilderness. And we see the evidence of this through the many miracles that they experienced. So remember, the holy powers, their manifestations are called miracles and healings. Evil powers, their manifestations are called witchcraft, magic, enchantments, what have you. Wickedness. The holy powers were sent to help the 12 tribes of Yasharal to overcome difficulties when they were on their exodus in the wilderness. So let's see how they helped, how these holy powers helped the 12 tribes of Yasharal. Shamawath, the book of Exodus, chapter 15, verse 23. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Masha, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto Yahweh, and Yahweh showed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them, meaning Alahayam proved the 12 tribes of Yasharal. All right? This was a test, and they failed. Instead of giving him praises for the 10 miracles that he wrought against Matzarayim and freed them from their bondage, and now, okay, yeah, we don't have any water, but we will pray and believe and have faith and trust that he will provide us with water. Okay, yes, these waters are bitter, but let's pray over the water. Now, could a tree change bitter water and make it sweet water? Now, when he's saying sweet water, it means that it is water that was drinkable. You have salty water, and you have these bitter waters here, but then sweet water is drinkable water. Yeah, that's what they call sweet water. Now, can a tree thrown in bitter water cause it to become sweet? Under normal circumstances, no. But this was the work of the powers. The action was obedience on Masha's part. Alahayam will instruct us to do strange things, and these strange things that he tells us to do will activate the powers. All right? Will activate the powers. And he did it a lot. If you go back to the Old Testament, he did it a lot then with our forefathers. He would tell them to do unusual things, but because they believed in him and trusted in him, it activated the powers on their behalf. And so a miracle is manifested. Now today, for us, is slightly different. And I'll explain to you by the next slide. All right? Let's read on. Shamawath chapter 16, verse 13. The book of Exodus chapter 16, verse 13. And it came to pass that at evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoar frost on the ground. And when Habanah Yashraal saw it, they said to one another, It is manna, for they did not know what it was. And Masha said unto them, This is the bread which Yahweh has given you to eat. So this manna that they ate for 40 years came as a result of the holy powers. Every morning for 6 days, on the 6th day, they will have twice as much to collect to serve them for the Shabbat, because it was not there on the Shabbat day, the 7th day. All right? And the same thing with the quails. Let's read about the quails. Madabar, the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verse 31. And there went forth a wind from Yahweh and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. So this wind from Alahayam are the powers. that brought the quails from the sea. And there were so much of it, so much of these birds. They were a day's journey on this side and a day's journey. That's how far apart and how far away the quails landed around them. And then they were 2 cubits high. So there were so much quails. There were so many quails that came because they were complaining. They were tired of just getting bread. They wanted meat. And so Alahayam sent them the quails, and he used a wind. He used the powers. These miracles were the holy powers at work providing sustenance for the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al. And not only them, but many of our other forefathers as well. So when you go back now into the Bible and you read about the miracles that occurred with them, know that it was this type of angel called the powers. We have to see that the extraordinary miracles and healings which our forefathers experienced, mainly in the Old Testament, in many different ways, were all the workings of these elusive angels. Our forefathers did not see with their eyes these angels at work, but they saw the results of their work as miracles. We now see that it was not always by faith that miracles were performed, but it was always by the will of Alahayam instructing his powers. And a good example of that is our forefathers in the wilderness. Every time they were complaining, we want water, we want bread, we want meat. And he used his holy powers for these people. They had no faith. They did not believe in him. And yet, miracles follow them. Miracles. These were the works of the powers. All right? However, faith too was used to activate these angels. Or when Alahayam instructed his people to either speak a word or to do a particular action, like Ahawaram with his rod. Not only were the powers used to sustain Yashwa'al, but they were used as warriors to protect them from their enemies and to destroy their enemies. These holy powers also assisted every time Habanai Yashwa'al went to war to ensure that none of our forefathers were slaughtered by their enemies, as long as they were obedient to the voice of Alahayam. Now, in saying that, I will also say this. There are also warrior angels that Alahayam used to war on behalf of his people. We saw that with Elisha and his servant. Remember when he said to him, he prayed and he asked Alahayam Yahweh to show him, his servant, the chariots of fire with angels of fire surrounding them. And there were more of them than of the other army that came out against Elisha. So there are other angels that Alahayam also used as his warriors. But the reason why he would use these powers is because they are like the wind. They're spirits and they're powerful. They're the next powerful angel after the cherubim. They're very powerful. Remember, we have the seraphim, and then you have the cherubim, along with the Ophanim and the spirits. Those are grouped together as one type of angel. But not, well, when I say one type, meaning they're grouped together because they work together, so their powers are basically the same. And then after that, now we have the powers. So these powers are mighty, mighty angels. They're powerful. And that's why when the magicians use the evil powers and invoke their magic, they were able to do a couple of the things because they have some power. They have some abilities, but not like the holy powers. Let's read on. These holy powers also assisted. I'm not sure if I read this, but I'll read it again. These holy powers also assisted every time Habanai Yashwa'al went to war to ensure that none of our forefathers were slaughtered by their enemies as long as they were obedient to the voice of Alahayam. Now, if you go to the book, there's a book called The 12 Testaments of the Patriarchs. And those are the 12 sons of Yaakov. And there were messages given to their children and for us today as well. And it gives you a little insight about the 12 patriarchs and how powerful they were. You go to the Apocrypha, I believe it's the book of Yashar, and the book, I believe it is Yashar, and the book of, um, what's it called? The book of Yarobal, Jubilees, yes, the book of Jubilees. It also offers some information to help us to understand more than what we read in the Bible. Remember, they've taken books out, destroyed a lot of them, hidden a lot of them, and changed what is written down. But when you read the historical accounts, you get to realize that Abraham, our forefather, was a warrior. So was Yaakov. The only person that was not a warrior was Yatsachak. He was a peaceful man. Because of Abraham, there was peace throughout his lifetime. Same thing like with Dawud. Dawud was a man of war, but his son Shalawam, who is Solomon, was a king of peace. He never had to go to war. His father did it all. All right? But when you look now at the 12 sons of Yaakov, you get a taste of it in certain things that you read about in the Bible. For example, the two sons, Lewi and Simeon, Shamaoan. All right? Remember when the prince of, I forgot the name of the city that they went to, he abused their sister Dinah, and they had a plan. And what they did, they told the prince because he was interested in marrying her after the fact, right? He abused her and then, oh yeah, I love her. I want to marry her. And they said, okay, well, if you want to, you got to be circumcised. All the men in your little city there needs to be circumcised. Yeah, Shechem. That was the name of the city, Shechem. And they went and they circumcised themselves because, oh yeah, the prince is going to get married. And so after they were circumcised, the men in this city, Simeon, Shamaoan, and Lewi went in with their swords and slaughtered every single one of them. It shows their power It shows their might. We know that our forefather Yahweh was a mighty man, a powerful man. He was probably the most powerful of all his brothers. In fact, they all had certain attributes, abilities that were not normal in the sense of what normal is. There was there was one brother, I forgot which one it was because it was a while since I've last read these accounts. He can climb the wall like without a rope or anything. He can climb the highest walls. Then there was another brother that can run very, very fast. And we know that Yahweh, who is Judah, he was a mighty, mighty warrior. But all the things that they were able to do was attributed to the powers that walked with them to make sure that none of the patriarchs would ever be touched. You see, Satan would have liked to cut them down, but he could not because they had these powers with them. Alahayam had his powers with them, and that's why when they went to war, not one of them was injured. Not Yaakov, not Abraham. I remember the story about Lot when he was taken by the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, he lived in Sodom and Gomorrah, but these other kings came and took him. Forgot the name of it. These are other stories that I did not plan to speak about, but they're coming to me right now. Abraham took a handful of men and went out and slaughtered these kings and their people and rescued Lot, who is Lot, and his servants. This is when Alahayam is on our side, when he is with us. In fact, let me switch that around. When we believe in him, so therefore we are with him. Because the reason why we fail or we fall prey to the enemy is when we turn away from him. He never leaves us. It's us that leave him. We are the ones that leave him. And the devils know that once we walk away from him, now we are sitting ducks. Because he is not going to run after us. Because we walk away from him. We, for whatever reasons. Disobedience, rebellion. And so his hands are tied. He can't do anything to protect us from our own selves. All right? The devils would like to destroy at that point in time, but sometimes we make mistakes, and sometimes you got to feel the burn in order to realize, hey, you know what? It's not all, it looks greener on the other side, but no, that green is artificial. I need to come back home. I need to come back under the protection of Alahayam. It looks a little dry over here, but I'm protected. And that's just my way of thinking. His ways are above my ways. All right? And I'm explaining all of this so that we can understand that the reason why Alahayam give us instructions in the form of laws, commandments, judgments, statutes is not to prohibit us from fun, from having a good time. It's just that the good time that we are seeking after will corrupt us. And not only will it corrupt us, but it will rob us of our inheritance. It will cause us to be led away from Him, where we can now be more corrupted, even to the point of being destroyed. So He gave us rules to live by so that we can maintain ourselves and make sure that we are obedient. Because once we are living obediently to His voice, then these devils have no power over us. They can't come near. Now, I was going to go into that. Actually, I'll do it at the ending because this is the last slide here. So let me finish up with this and then I will continue on what I was about to say in the third slide. Yahweh, the book of Joshua, chapter 6, verse 16. And it came to pass at the seventh time, when the priest blew the trumpets, Yahweh, this is Joshua, said unto the people, Shout, for Yahweh has given you the city. Now let's drop down to verse 20. So the people shouted when the priest blew the trumpets, and it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. So this will be the wall of Jericho. And the people inside the walls and the people inside the city heard the shout of the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al with a mighty shout. And it wasn't the shout that brought down the wall, it was the shout that activated the powers, the holy powers, to press this wall down. All right? So you understand when we are obedient, because what Yahweh told Yahweh, who is Joshua, tell the people to march around the wall 6 times and do not speak a word. Just go around the wall quietly for 6 days, once each day. And then this time around, the 7th time, now tell the people to shout and blow the trumpets. They didn't do anything else. And then the wall came down. This mighty wall, this wall was so thick that people were living in it. There were apartments in the wall. The only person that wasn't injured was Rahab and her family, because she helped the 2 spies. She was preserved. But all other people, this is the power that I'm talking about. I mean, when you believe in the Most High, when you believe in His Son, because that's where it starts, Can't get to the Father without the Son. Do you understand what we have access to? The power that we have access to? We have His power. And His power trumps even the angels and their powers. But we have a magnificent, a rare array of powers surrounding us, protecting us, watching over us, guiding us, leading us. This is what we need to understand. Yes, in the natural, we don't see what is really taking place in the spiritual realm. You trust me, you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. Just look around the world and see what's going on in the world. That depresses people, right? All this wickedness in this world depresses people. Imagine if you could see into the spiritual realm and see all the warfare going on there. You won't be able to handle it. This is the reason why we can only handle what we see around. In fact, we can barely handle what is happening around us. And this is the reason why he doesn't want us to see into the realm, the spiritual realm. Not able to handle it. Let's finish up here. We see that Alahayam would oftentimes use his servants to activate his powers. This was Yahweh's first major battle since he took the position as leader over the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al. Alahayam had promised him that he would be with him as he was with Masha. And so this battle became his inauguration into his leadership position. The wall of Jericho was intimidating, and it looked impossible to breach. I'm sure when they were marching around, they look at it like, wow, what is Alahayam going to do? They knew something great was going to happen. They knew it. They felt it. And it was a growing anticipation every time they went around that wall. Growing anticipation for them and growing fear for the people of Jericho. And you know who else was watching? The nations around, they were watching. Yet when Yahweh followed Alahayam's instructions, the powers were released. And what looked impossible became possible and defeatable. Did they not defeat Jericho? Yes, they did. Destroy them all. All right? Now, this is when Alahayam is with us. Now, what I was saying earlier is about us today. We're going to look at that in the next study, the conclusion of the powers. All right? So that we can understand the difference between our forefathers in the Old Testament and us today. And remember, the powers, they are a very powerful angel. They're powerful angels, not just one. Very, very powerful. And he used them as warriors. Okay? He used them for our forefathers to bring about his miracles and healings. But he also used them as warriors. All right? Now, I don't want to say much more than that because it will be covered in the next study. Okay? So with that, that's the ending of part 4 called the powers. And we're going to conclude with the blessing for Yashwa'al taken from Ba Madabar chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. That's the book of Numbers chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yahanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yasham lak Shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now we're going to recite the commandment that he told us to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come in, taken from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. That's Alahayam chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. Shama o Yashwa'al, Yahweh Alahayana, Yahweh Ahad, wa Ahabath, Yahweh Alahayak, Bakal Lababak, wa Bakal Napashat, wa Bakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Alahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh your Alahayam with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that, I will say, Shalawam, Shalawam. All praises to the Most High. Abba Yah.